All right. Welcome to the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board of Trustees 2026 Budget Workshop. This is Monday, October 27th, 2025. The meeting is a hybrid in both Zoom with the agenda link at the top of the agenda and in person at Village Hall. It is 6:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted, so we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we're on number 4, public appearances. It's the public's opportunity to speak. There's no one in the room. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak? We'll move on to number 5, new business, which is discuss and consider the 2026 preliminary budget as recommended by the Budget Review Committee. The way it'll work tonight is I'll kick it over to Matt for an introduction and Cameron, and then they will facilitate discussions of the department memos and the budget requests. We'll let questions kind of occur for each of those department heads or the recommending bodies, and then if there is anything that warrants further discussion, I'll make note of it and we'll come back to it at the end for discussion. And then a motion that includes both the budget and then setting the date for the public hearing. Because we do have trustees online tonight, if you could use the raise hand function, and we'll keep track of that up here, so I just don't want to miss anyone during the discussion. So without further ado, Administrator Giese, take it away.
Thank you, Cindy. So we'll start here with a PowerPoint to just kind of cover some highlights before we kick things off and summarize the budget overall. These are the objectives we'll be touching base on: the timeline of the budget process, a summary of the Budget Review Committee's proposed levy, and then a summary of the operating and capital budgets. Our timeline started in April with our staff putting together capital requests, which then filtered to the village board for the prioritization process that was finalized in July. Following that process, we built the financial management plan that the board ultimately approved in September, and then that flowed to department heads and building their budgets, which were reviewed and approved by appropriate committees, and then that came to administration to recommend a budget to the Budget Review Committee, which happened a couple weeks ago. And then the Budget Review Committee made the recommendation that's in front of the board tonight. Following tonight, we'll have a preliminary budget and public hearing, and then that sets us off to the middle of November for potential adoption. This graph here summarizes how the tax levy through this budget process has played out. So the village board approved a financial management plan that would have resulted in a levy of about $6.83 million. Department heads, individual departments, when everything was put together, that budget request was about $50,000 higher than the village board's draft levy. Administration's proposed budget reduced the village board's financial management plan levy by about $340,000, and then Budget Review Committee made one modest adjustment that increased that request by about $3,000. This slide summarizes how that graph builds into tax impact, reflective of last year. So you can see the the impact, if we were to approve the financial management plan, approved levy would be about $239 for the average home. And then you can see how that filtered through the process down to the $110 increase, which is what the Budget Review Committee is recommending tonight. This graph shows the last 5 years of tax impact on the average home, which has ranged from $97 to a high of $127 in '24, and then the proposed $110 for 2026. The proposed operating budget, some highlights here. The police department, the most notable portion of their increase is due to salaries and wages for the new collective bargaining agreement. The fire department, there's a $38,000 increase to implement the village's portion of pay per call. And then Deer Grove EMS, there's a new collective bargaining agreement there as well, and a new administrative support position that's included. So that's a $25,000 increase for the village's portion of that. As far as the village staff positions are concerned, there are not any requests in this budget. The capital budget, most notable being an investment into a new police station at $16.3 million. And then we have our annual road, sidewalk, and trail maintenance and annual vehicle and equipment replacement budgets at about a little over $1 million and $840,000 respectively. Also a notable trail improvements along BB and Bus, the bike path, and Damascus bike trail at $400,000. This graphic here, we put together at tax time, and we want to start bringing it forward during the budget process. This will ultimately include the other taxing jurisdictions once we know where their budgets land. But what this helps you visually see is how the proposed budget would have about a $2,464 impact for the average home. And then how is that $2,464 of taxes divvied up through the various areas of our budget? So that's what this graphic shows, and it's probably not best viewed through this slide, but we usually have it on a big 4-foot by 5-foot poster board. We can also get this out in a PDF to everyone as well. And then lastly here, these were the motions that were made by the Budget Review Committee. So the most notable, or the only adjustment that had an impact on the levy was an additional communications mailer that was added, and then there was some shifting of where the funds would come from for Bakken Park removal, which was shifted to the Park Development Fund. I can pause there if there's initial questions, otherwise I can continue with some other budget notes and highlights. All right, some other budget notes that I included in the packet. Our 2025 equalized value increased by about 14%, which is about $188 million. About 5% of that figure is due to new construction. Once you take TIF districts out, our assessed value increased by about 1%. And also with that, our assessed value to equalized value ratio has dipped to about 70%, which is why this year we're going through the revaluation process, which will be implemented January 1 of 26. That will bring all properties to fair market value, so back to approximately 100%. A little bit lower on the memo, we just kind of detail the tax levy and tax impact. This is kind of just the outline of what you saw in the presentation. This kind of just tells the story of each step and the impact for the average home. So following tonight's meeting, there'll be another entry of this to reflect what happens at the budget workshop, and then there'll be another one following the budget public hearing. And then at the bottom, to provide some context, every $10,000 in the tax levy equals about $3.78 of taxes for the average assessed home in the village, which is currently $315,000. So with that, Cameron's going to go over some additional budget overview and budget highlights, and then we'll get going into department requests.
All right, so this is a similar memo that's shared kind of year over year, things that are significant that go into the overall budget process. So first and foremost, general fund reserves is a key factor that the bond rating agencies pay attention to, as well as that's a key figure that kind of identifies the village's overall fiscal health. By my estimates, we should be around 30 to 32% at the end of 2025, and about 31% at the end of 26, given the preliminary budget. So that's slightly above our fund balance policy, but well within reason. From a growth perspective, it's no shock to people in this room. We have kind of one of the highest net new construction percentages in the county. The average of the county is 2.37%, and for 2025, we were at 5.3%. So that factor is important because it's one of the very few factors that determines what we're able to increase our levy to maintain existing services. Next, kind of just briefly talk about infrastructure. Infrastructure is a high cost of the village, but it also carries a high deferral cost. So it's important that there's an emphasis on maintaining and replacing our infrastructure to avoid kind of future large liabilities. Kind of as we jump into the highlights portion of this memo, Wisconsin CPIU is currently at 2.65%. That is really a figure both from a labor and supplies and purchases of where we sit year over year on our increased costs to provide the services to our residents. The kind of rolling average of that figure is about 2.83%. That is a figure that's updated annually. We do take this number and pull it right into our cost of living adjustment. So this budget is reflective of a 2.65% cost of living adjustment. And as Matt mentioned, our overall levy that was recommended from the Budget Review Committee was at $6,512,526. As we'll touch kind of briefly on some of these in each memo, just some highlights broken down into the required sections. So kind of the way that all governments are required to report out expenditures are in 5 or 6 major sections, depending on what's involved. So general government, that's typically your clerk, treasurer, court services, public safety, which is police, EMS, fire, public works, culture, rec, and education, human services, and conservation and development. So if we kind of look at where did we see the increases this year for general government, I listed a couple factors. The biggest factors being is we're going from 2 elections to 4 elections next year, so that comes with an increased cost. as well as corresponding municipal court costs. So people get a citation, they dispute it, that comes with a carrying cost. So as we see revenue go up for that, so do we see the overall cost. And then professional services, there's just been an increased demand on the particular legal services that are required to review transactions and day-to-day business. So that's represented as part of the general fund increase. Public safety, we'll break this into 3 sections. For fire, the big reason for their increase in this budget is the pay per call, as Matt mentioned, as well as some increase in officer pay. For EMS, again, they had a new union agreement along with the increase in the administrative support. And then obviously the police department, no new positions, but there is an updated union agreement for the police department. So kind of all in all, public safety increase was a combined 173,000 increase. Public works is 3% more than last year's budget, but flat with 2024. So what that means is there was a slight decrease last year, and now there was a 3% increase to put us in line with our 2024 spending. Culture, rec, and education. So the largest factor of that increase is the increase in the Bakken Park splash pad, and increased cost in programming. The increased cost in programming is ultimately recovered in the fees that are charged to those users, so there's a corresponding revenue. I always try to also note important internal as well as external factors. So the external factor I've listed here is the village's 5th largest taxpayer last year, which was Drumlin Reserve LLC, which had $13.3 million of assessed value. It's now a tax-exempt property. So if that property would have been included in this year's budget, the average home would have saw their actual impact to their taxes $38.90 less. So that was a big hurdle to get over through this budget. It still maintain a relatively modest increase and not have it balloon because of the loss of assessed value. The difficult part about that property in particular is it still has a high demand on public services that we have to provide regardless if it's tax exempt or taxable property. We'll go in further details in the memo, but at a high level, this is a great summary of all the significant capital projects this year as proposed for 2026, highlighted with the police station project and the BB and bus Pike and Damascus bike improvement. It is important to note, and all of these numbers are at gross. So for the police station, I will note a couple numbers. There are 4 active grant applications that I'm working through. One for the community room, which is about $370,800. Focus on energy for the solar for about $11,000. IRA for solar for about $108,000. And $232,000 for geothermal. We've already been awarded $18,300 for focus on energy related to the geothermal project. And obviously we will continue to actively investigate other grants and opportunities for funding to reduce impact. In the annual road, sidewalk, and trail maintenance, Kyla has presented in her budget a breakdown of what she anticipates the breakdown and projects to be to stay within our $1,051,000 allocation. And more to come with the result of a bid. So favorable bid, unfavorable bids may at some point change that allocation to make sure that we stay within our means. Our proposed summary of vehicles and equipment, kind of similar situation. We start off with kind of our allowance, if you will, at the $1,051,000, work back. Ultimately what is presented is something that's roughly $212,000 less than that annual allowance, highlighted by the board previously approved the DS 200 upgrades to DS300s, our annual updates to our computer and our IT infrastructure. Fire is the replacement with the 3 thermal imaging cameras. Police, there's several items listed here. Public Works, again, several items listed here. And similar with culture, rec, and education. We'll talk more about those when we get into those memos. So kind of when we're looking at the packet overall, just remember 411 and 412 are our borrowing funds, and 410, which is our capital project fund, is our cash funded projects. So this is a list of what the rest of this page is things that would be used with cash on hand or grants that we have. So with that,
I guess that's a good point
Pause.
to pause if there's any initial questions before we get into individual departments. Okay. Starting off with the administration's budget request. There, as a summary before we go through each item, there's a $2,000 request in the general fund. The balance are capital-related items totaling about $139,000. The general fund increase is being requested through the Colonial Club, which handles our senior services, and there's a supplemental memo that's in the packet that provides detail to that request. The capital projects fund requests that we have, there's a professional services item that would provide support to administration for filling potential positions. The $25,000 that's requested in here could help us fill up to 2 management level positions. If those are not needed, then those funds would remain in Fund 410 and could be used for other items as requested. The communications request is for primarily to increase communications efforts related to the revaluation process. And then there's also costs associated with 2 certifications for staff to be able to fly the drone that the village has. There's a $5,000 request for IT equipment that would, that's a contingency line item to cover any failed IT equipment as it comes up. The village has been discussing village and town have been talking about a fire and EMS operational and facility study. That's in here as an up to $40,000 request. Of course, the town has been talking about funding their portion as well, so we would make adjustments as appropriate. And then the vehicle and equipment replacement fund, which is the Fund 411. We have equipment IT planned replacement for workstations at $17,000, and then election equipment replacement that the board had approved back in September for about $46,000. Any questions on any of those items?
Yeah, I had a question. So on the computer replacement, so there was $17,250 for 12 to 13 workstations. What is the strategy in terms of like how many years are you expecting to get out of workstations? And is this like 50% of the workstations? Is this like a wholesale, all the workstations? Like what is the strategy?
So with the computer replacement program, it's primarily based off of who's using it. So if the user who's issued that computer doesn't have a computer be their primary task, we try to extend the life of those computers at least 5 years. If a computer is essential to somebody's day-to-day task, it's 3 to 4 years. And again, we have our IT company run analysis on performance, and we identify the computers that need to be replaced. So this is roughly a third to a fourth of the stations. What this does do in 2022, we got back on track. So we used some of our ARPA funding to get back into a cycle of replacement as opposed to having to replace everything at once, because that became a challenge. We had to replace our server, our firewalls, our switches, and a lot of our computer replacements in a year. So this maintains that kind of a scheduled approach. I get questions too on the IT equipment failed line. Why is this line duplicated? Those are really meant to be kind of separate out. That 5,000 contingency is if something would actually fail, like a switch would fail, or a critical piece of equipment that couldn't wait till the next budget cycle. It's not a lot, but it does get us through the year on things that have to be replaced. Okay.
All right. Next, we have Deer Grove VMS, Chief Lang.
It was red down there, honest it was. Good evening. So the Deer Grove EMS Commission worked for the past couple months to develop a budget and submit it for approval. Included in the budget, as mentioned, was adjustments for the collective bargaining agreement, along with extra expenses for an administrative services support position, increase in capabilities. We went through the budget and not only found places that we felt needed increase, we found decreases as well throughout the whole budget, with decreases due to the actual cost of health insurance, increases in the cost that we pay for our billing company and the services they provide to us, increase in communications and some other line items for agreed upon contracts for our CAD softwares, our scheduling software, our patient report software, and the like, increase in disposable equipment that we use to provide care to patients. We found a decrease in vehicle maintenance because of owning a newer ambulance and the future ownership of a new response vehicle, that we were able to pretty significantly decrease that budget line. Also, we have the ability to track and try to predict our expected revenue, so we were able to increase that a bit as well. So that overall worked through the budget to submit the budget to the village that had the increase of about $25,000 total.
All right, other questions for EMS?
Okay, next we have Fire Department. I believe Assistant Chief April is on Zoom.
Hello. I will do my best to cover for Nick tonight. He's teaching, so I will go over, I think the biggest changes that you see in the budget is adding the pay-per-call, which will help with recruitment and retention, both, but primarily recruiting new firefighters. It's an incentive that really helps kind of engage and increase our staffing. Officer pay is also just paying our officers for what they're doing. We haven't necessarily been great about doing that. So adding pay to the budget for our officer staff. Also in there, so just kind of some of the changes that you see overall in the budget. He does have apparatus increased about $5,000 for the maintenance. He estimated that that's what we would maybe see as an increase for apparatus maintenance. Turnout gear, he increased due to new members joining and having to replace gear. He also wanted to replace helmets. We've got a lot over their 10-year life expectancy. He increased insurance premiums because those are expected to go up this year as they do every year. So he wanted to be realistic about some of that. First due, that's our records management contract. So that's got an annual increase for percentage rate on that. So he increased the percentage rate for first due. Annual physicals, just based on code changes that are up and coming in the next few years. We added those last year, but he wants to make sure that we're adding a couple other things into those annual physicals, including drug testing. And then MDT CAD licensing is also going to increase the cost of licensing. And then hose testing, our quote for hose testing also increased from our previous year. So those are some of the changes that you see in our budget.
All right, any questions for April? All right, thanks, April. Moving along to Sean, Parks and Rec.
Thanks, Matt. Quickly going over our biggest request or operating request would be 10,000 for the splash pad. As Cameron mentioned, just higher chemical and water costs, as well as some preventative maintenance stuff that we're looking to do. Keep that up and running. The capital projects fund, 35,000 to remove the existing playground at Bakken Park. Just a reminder of the potential of Miracle League fundraising for that big project, so we want to be able to make sure that we recycle as much of that playground as possible and reuse it. Next couple are just our typical recurring ones. Engineered wood fiber, which is the playground chips you see underneath playgrounds. We're asking for 10,000 to keep up to date with those. Every year we have to continue to add to those. And our ADA, so we're plugging away at our ADA checklist. So each year we ask for 10,000 to continue with that project. Community park shelter and architectural engineering and design, so 115,000. We'd like to do the engineering in 26 for possibility of shelter construction in 27. Vehicle equipment, we have a 2014 Jeep Cherokee that we use to not only transport staff, but get staff to programs with equipment and things like that. We'd like to replace that vehicle. We have our oldest zero-turn mower, about 5 years old, looking to replace that and actually sell that or trade it in. We've still got some value to that if we do it before the hours get too far up. A 2013 Toro Workman, which is a piece of equipment that's much like a gator. If you're familiar with those, it gives us a lot of flexibility to actually do move around parks and grassy areas without ripping up the turf. Bakken parking lot improvements. We talked about this this summer a little bit, just adding some more handicap accessible stalls within that park. We're going to be working with, this project is most likely going to be done in-house with the help of Public Works. So the 62.5 will definitely cover that. And the last one that we're looking is just to add some windscreen to the community park pickleball tennis courts. So just kind of preventing some of the wind from getting in on those courts.
And just a couple notes, administration reduced, excuse me, the splash pad operational cost by 3,000 down to 7,000 total. And then we reduced the Bakken Park playground removal from 35,000 to 25,000. And then Budget Review Committee adjusted the fund, the funding of the Bakken Park Playground removal to go from the capital, instead of the capital projects fund, to be funded by Park Development Fund. So with that, we can take questions for Sean and Parks and Rec.
I had a couple questions. So the first one, the Bakken playground. So is there really $25,000 worth of equipment that we would actually redeploy? And what would be the cost to store this equipment, and where would it be stored?
It's not just equipment, it's obviously the wood and everything that goes with that. So is there yeah, I would say that there's definitely at least $25,000 worth of equipment there that we can reuse.
And do we have a probable location where we would deploy it? I mean, is there like some sort of concept, or is this like, could be a 5-year horizon where we sit on this material?
Yeah, it's part of it we'll use immediately to repair and replace some picnic table stuff, but it's going to be something that's an ongoing project.
Isn't the idea that it would be reused in different imaginative ways for Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, projects?
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, $25,000 is a lot to remove versus buy new at some point. So, like, if you're just going to repair park benches, $1,000 worth of wood goes a long way. And if there's other projects like you're talking, it's just a lot of money to remove something, and then where's it going to go? Because we're going to have to store it, right? It's kind of that whole notion of, well, put it in the basement, and whenever you need it, it's there. But it could be 10 years, and then you move out, and it ends up in the junk anyway. That's my concern on spending $12,000 worth of precious dollars. If there's a plan, I get it. If there's not, I question it.
I think that the village board gave direction because that was something that they felt was important, or we felt was important with that park.
Yeah, I think the focus of that discussion was really around the Miracle League, and this was really kind of a side conversation. As you look at the bigger budget, I still question it.
I have that item noted to bring up.
Pete, just to, I'm sure that, I just want to reiterate that the direction was to try and reuse as much of that as possible, correct? Just so that we weren't just taking that stuff and throwing it into a landfill somewhere. And I think there's definitely value in that, and I think there's a lot of different uses that we haven't really thought it through 100% yet.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and we did talk about that, and I do recall that, but it kind of comes down to, now we're going to pull it out, and we're going to spend a lot of money to pull something out. I just question it, but if there is confidence that we will use it in a timely fashion, and we won't be sitting on storage costs or, a pile of stuff that is going to be there for a long time, I'm fine with it, but it's a lot of money to remove old equipment that probably has, when we talked about it, the playground itself was at the end of its useful life, or it had like 2 or 3 years left. So then I question, would we really deploy some of this stuff to the level of the dollars we're talking?
Just one last follow-up on that. If we weren't going to be reusing any of the materials, we would still have to pay something to have it removed, is that?
Correct.
And that's the village's responsibility, not the Miracle League's part of construction responsibility.
That was the agreement, yes, that would be village responsibility.
All right, we can bring that back up at the end. I will list 2 cameras. All right.
I had a
questions?
couple other questions, if
Okay.
I could just keep going. So the second one is the community park shelter. We talked about doing the A&E. When I look at the proposal that you'd sent over, Cam, it shows $90,000 for A&E and $25,000 for construction services, which to me should be allocated to the construction phase. So should this really be $90,000 and then $25,000 as a follow-up to construction?
I agree, that's a good recommendation. So kind of going back and looking at that, I think we wanted to originally include the all-in cost, but I think because this board hasn't definitively recommended moving forward with the project, at this time only authoring 90,000 is a good recommendation. I will add it to our list at the end so we can, if there's consensus, there could be part of a motion.
Okay,
Cameron, can I add to that? This is Josh. I agree that it should go down to the 90. That makes total sense to me. But remember, we also, and I don't think it's in here, there'll be some geotech and a little bit of hazmat that goes with the design and what has to be removed from there. So that might be another 10. So we might not be able to go all the way down to the 90. I think you should probably give a little bit of a cushion in there, closer to 100.
that's great. Thank you, Josh. I mean, clearly the A&E should be just the design portion, and so
Yep.
that makes perfect sense. The only other question I had was the community park pickleball court windscreen. I mean, I play pickleball. I've played both at Bakken and community park. I mean, we have really state-of-the-art facilities, which is great. Bakken does have windscreens. There are more courts there. You know, $15,000 of a nice to have when we've got great facilities that 95% of the time I play there, wind's really not a factor. I would recommend removing that, and if the pickleball organization in Cottage Grove wants to raise money to do that to the court, I mean, they've done that sort of thing in Wanakee, where the local club would raise money, then I say we do it, but I don't think taxpayers should bear the burden of another pickleball court with windscreen, even though I play and I would like to have it, but again, I would rather have indoor facilities, so if we could build that, that'd be great. But I think it's the right thing to do is to remove that.
All right, I think Renee had her hand up.
Yes, thank you. So Peter, you asked a question, or talked about the 90,000, so thank you. That was one question I had. And looking at the vehicle and equipment replacement, I'm just curious, so I see, and I understand about the 2014 Jeep replacement and cost, but is there a possibility to look at something way less expensive, like a minivan where you could still haul and transport staff as well as equipment to maybe get a couple of different estimates? And then for replacing the zero-turn mower, which needs to replace, again, would it be possible to get a couple more quotes, like from John Deere, which I believe is made in Wisconsin, and maybe another brand such as Kubota? My understanding, and I could be wrong, so you have to correct me, Sean, is that the Toro, there tends to be a lot of breakdown and upkeep cost along with that mower. So, you know, I'm just kind of asking questions because there's a lot that I don't know.
Sean, could you touch on why that equipment was chosen for replacement? And then touch on your process for selecting mowers?
Sure. First of all, the Jeep replacement, yeah, we're looking at all kinds of different options as far as what is going to be the most feasible for getting equipment and staff around. The 65,000 would be the worst case scenario that we would be looking to spend. We haven't decided on what type of vehicle is going to best suit us yet. So hopefully that answers that question a little bit, Renee. And the mower replacement, again, that number, we haven't even picked a style yet or a brand of mower that we're going to get. We typically use Toro, but we will investigate every other option out there to make sure that we're getting what is best use for us. So it's just a number right now. It's not necessarily a brand or a style.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Renee, would you like that kind of parked for later?
Yes, thank you.
Anything else for parks? All right, so if not, we'll move on to planning and development. Aaron Ruth.
Thanks, Matt. Really just one item in my section here for updating the comprehensive plan. Had this in here last year. It wasn't selected for the budget, so just requesting it again. We have done updates in-house in the past, but it's usually a chapter here or a chapter there. I think we're due for a fresh take on the whole plan all at once. That's very time-consuming and difficult to do here in-house. An outside consultant, I think, would bring a fresh perspective. there'll be a greater depth of technology in terms of mapping and things like that, and could also do a more robust public participation than I would be able to do just by myself. So I think there's a lot of value in putting this out.
Questions for Aaron? And again, we did, this number is on the high end, and we fully expect it to come hopefully well under.
Yeah, and I think with this, we could include some redevelopment planning for the TID 9 properties as well.
All right, Paula has her hand up.
Sorry, I hit the wrong icon. Just a quick question, maybe for the board that was there last year, or perhaps staff. Why did it get removed from last year?
I think there was some interest in possibly doing a strategic plan as opposed to the comprehensive plan. And I think that was discussed earlier this year, and I believe the board chose not to do that either.
Yeah, I think that's right, Aaron. The idea was, if we were gonna do, we certainly didn't want to do both of those in the same year, so it was just doing, trying to do one per calendar year.
And I think I had asked the question, or at least it was in my head, I don't know if it came out at budget review. We're doing the fire and EMS study, we have the reevaluation, we're upping our communication efforts, but we still think that hiring a consultant for a comp plan update would still be feasible with workload for village staff, and with the amount of communication that we're doing, we'd probably maybe get better engagement. Just my
There is a note in here. I've seen other municipalities kind of spread these over 2 years, or they might start it the second half of 1 year, finish it the first half of the next, and kind of split the budget amount over 2 years. You know, that could be a possibility too if there's discomfort with the number.
Well, I guess the question would be the urgency of it. I mean, if we did split it, we'd still budget 100,000, but how would that impact the levy? Would it take 50 grand off the levy?
Nope, there's no levy dollars on this item. This is all cash on hand. So it wouldn't have any impact splitting over 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
Next, we have,
Oh, Paula's.
sorry, Paula.
Go ahead, Paula.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna mention, it seems like our housing task force is kind of behind a little bit because there's not as much availability from the county. So perhaps pushing it to mid next year, we could get through the housing chapter at least before then. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's possible. Hopefully that won't take us the whole first half of next year to wrap that up. But as you said, the county staff has been, took a big hit in their budget process. They're down to just really one person in their housing department at the county level, so that has made it a little bit harder. I mean, we may also make the decision that we just take the survey from that process and some of the goals and priorities we set in that process and fold it into this larger comprehensive update too. It might be something for the committee to discuss.
All right, any other questions?
All right, now Chief Gary and Police Department.
Evening, thank you. So, I'm not going to regurgitate the whole memo. Highlights, operating request was for 2 additional officers for 2026. You'll see through the process, those 2 positions requests were eliminated for future discussion to truly benefit the village as a whole. Major project, obviously, we understand that the police department is a major project for 2026. Going into our vehicle and equipment squads, we'd have 2 squads that would be up for replacement, cycling through, again, trying to get onto a good plan so that the village is set for the future for appropriate planning purposes, and we get the best return on investment, i.e. when we sell them at auction, getting the village's best money back. Request for firearm and equipment replacement. Again, it's sort of setting the village up for a planned expenditure. Right now, currently, weapons are anywhere between 5 to 10 years approximately in age. Whole idea, obviously, I hope none of our officers ever have to use their sidearm, but it's a high-risk, low-frequency item, and if they do need to utilize it, they should have the best capable equipment possible for their safety and the community's safety. The other part of it is if we do a trade-in, again, we can get the best return on the money for the new purchase of firearms and equipment that go along with it versus piecemealing it, one here, one there, a couple at a time. Villages, again, in the emergency management realm, working on updating the tornado sirens for the village as a whole. This is adding a third siren to the village to, again, cover those outdoor spaces. As the village continues to grow, we make assessments, potentially a fourth or fifth siren in the future. This is just the third. I referenced the live scan fingerprint. Again, you'll notice in the memos through the process that item has been removed out at this time and potentially could be purchased during the building project with some of the funds that we're striving to save the village there. There was an implementation of a drone UAS program, again in the infancy stages. Well, the village has their drone. That doesn't cover some of the things that we're looking for. You'll notice that that's been removed out of the process as we discussed it for future implementation. The flock cameras, they've been very vital as a force multiplier for our agency. We currently have 7 units deployed at various strategic locations throughout the village. Part of this plan when I came in was to try and minimize the cost increase impact. So we projected out 10 units in total. We are currently paying $2,500 a unit. I can tell you that other agencies that did not think ahead are over the 3,000 mark per unit. Again, strategically placing these units so that they optimize our notification for our officers so we have time to respond and react to the information that they're providing. They've been utilized on several occasions for recovering stolen vehicles, also for finding individuals that were missing not only in state but out of state and reuniting them with family members. And also they've been utilized for some of the criminal activity that's occurred here in the village, but also throughout the Midwest region, where we've been able to provide the information and solve some cases and make some charges, not only here in Wisconsin, but actually for other agencies outside of the state. And then the tail end is the miscellaneous items, and these are just some general housekeeping items for updating, making sure that we have the right equipment for the officers when they need it, and getting some replacement equipment in there. So that is short and sweet to the point for you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'll go ahead. I got 2 questions, I think, here. So the first question, the 2 new squads, I think we talked about this. So one of those was the replacement for the totaled hybrid, right?
That is the plan, yes.
Okay, so that will most likely be funded through insurance. Okay. Second question is the firearm and equipment. I totally understand reliability is absolutely critical. So this is replacing all the department's firearms?
All the service weapons that are worn by the officers on a daily basis, yes.
Okay. And so as the department has grown, the age obviously is different. Is there any way to do like a stage replacement? And I know you said obviously there's some economies of scale by doing it all at once. It's just a lot of money for replacing firearms, and I guess, I mean, I'm assuming they get fired on the range, you
That
know,
is
up
correct.
the Dane County range.
In training, some officers train off duty also on their own time. The other aspect of it is truly it's that return, i.e. being able to bring the bulk in for the best price point for a trade-in. When you sort of piecemeal it, even if you want to say you had 5 guns, you're not going to get that highest price back for the trade-in, reducing the initial investment. Again, the number in here is the top end. I truly hope to come in well under that. I can't say significantly under, but I'm going to
Just
target
curious,
for well.
how many firearms are we talking?
We'd be talking roughly 23.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was, let's see here. It was on the flock cameras, and I guess that's the vendor, right? And as we add units, I guess the question is, how long is this contract, and is there any opportunity to utilize and host it ourselves? Or is that even not?
Not an option.
Not with flock, but is there, okay.
Not with flock, and if we were going to completely change our license plate reader system, that's a large investment
Okay.
for server and all of that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Peter, any of those items, what you want to add for discussion later? Paula, I think, had her arms.
I just wanted to mention, I'd like to add the capital items for the police department to the end discussion.
Can you clarify which ones, Paula?
Pretty much all the capital, honestly. I think just a broad discussion as well. And I guess, you know, I saw that Chris voted against it in budget review and would like to learn more.
Okay. Next, we have Public Works, Kyla.
Hi, everyone. So we have just 2 operating requests this year for note of mention. One is our street maintenance and operations, a toolcat trade-in program. We previously were in this program several years ago. A toolcat on average costs $100,000 plus the annual preventative maintenance, and any repairs are done, which adds up to a costly toolcat. We can get into this program where we would pay $15,000 to get into the program this year, and then $7,000 moving on from there. You have the toolcat for 1 year. They do all the preventative maintenance and any repairs that happen to it. Additionally, roadway supplies, we have a $30,000 decrease to the salt. We had a surplus of salt this year. We sold some actually to the city of Fitchburg, so our salt shed is completely full, and we still are getting our allocated for next year. Capital project funds, as Cameron mentioned previously, we have the streetlights at the DNR trailhead over here off of N. That's going to be offset by a DNR grant to add some streetlights. We have the stormwater utility feasibility study. So this is for investigating and implementing a stormwater utility study with Strand leading that effort. It also include legal as well as some public interaction to get it out there to look at taking over. Instead of levying for this storm sewer utility, we would then look to any maintenance cost on the utility itself. It would be recommended that if we do move forward with this study, that it is the intent to implement that in January of 2027. We also have village building maintenance. As our MSB building continues to get older, we have some additional maintenance that's requested there. And then we are carrying over the MPO planning grant that has not started yet due to the delay in the federal funding grant. Our major projects for 2026 includes the BB bus, bike path, and Damascus Trail improvements. We're going to be adding some path and redoing some path. We've talked about the vehicle equipment replacements. There's a variety of equipment that we are looking to replace as well as add. And then overall, we have the 2026 road, streets, and trail maintenance. As Cameron mentioned, we would go out for bid as we have done previously here with the pulverizing jobs, and then any additional monies left over would be for chip sealing and sidewalk maintenance. There is a map included in the packet as well if you have any questions on what that looks like. And then you have the 2027 engineering for the 2026 budget, including Ollie Street reconstruction, which would have a water, a sewer, and a capital improvements fund portion of it to reconstruct the road, as well as the county highway and Main Street reconstruction that has Reynolds South as you enter the village limits. Any questions for me?
Before questions, Kyla, just one note that administration reduced the stormwater feasibility study down from the 110,000 to 100,000. Just as we were refining the budget and in talks with Strand, we are confident it will can be done for that figure or less. Questions for Kyla? And Josh Straka was from Strand is available too if there's questions for him.
Go ahead, Paula.
Just a general question. I know we mentioned Strand with that study. I mean, do we not put things like that out for competitive bids?
So we could. So part of the reason why you would utilize Strand in this instance is they're the village engineer, and then two, they would be piggybacking off of their stormwater management plan that's being conducted in 2025. So they're gonna have some synergies with already, their price point is at the price that some of that stuff is already done, but ultimately can do whatever the board recommends.
And just to add on that, only public construction over 25,000 needs to be publicly bid. So when there's something that's for professional services, we do try to at least get multiple quotes or an RFP. But as Cameron mentioned, if there's an existing consultant that we already utilize that went through that process, as long as our research suggests that their cost is what we would expect, then we wouldn't recommend it, but like Cameron said, we certainly can.
Any other questions?
If there aren't any other questions, that concludes the staff presentation portion, so we can go back through items that were identified.
So I just have the parks items, the development, and all capital items associated with the police department. So should we hop back up to parks? And first up, we want to discuss more of the Bakken Park removal. Budget Review Committee recommended using park development funds to fund the entire park removal. And then we heard from Sean storing it and future
Yeah, you know,
ideas,
I think Heidi brought up a really good point that it's got to be removed anyway. And when we went through it with the Miracle League, we agreed to remove it. So, I mean, I don't know what the cost differential is, but if you've identified valid uses and we're going to have to pay to remove it anyway, I mean, obviously, this is more than just the complete demo. You go in there and you demo, it's a little less organized, right?
Yeah, this is taking it apart in a thoughtful manner and storing it for future repurposing, because the community had come together 15 years ago to put the, and put time and effort into that. It's kind of honoring them in that way too, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I'm fine with it. I mean, I really hesitate just keeping stuff just in case, because it just in case ends up just adding clutter and cost. So, but, I mean, I think the comments you made, Heidi, or Cindy, I'm aligned.
Paula, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that that was something that I felt strongly about, was trying to repurpose those items from a sustainability purpose, but also from a community purpose. My, I didn't quite remember this correctly, so Matt, if you can help me out, because I know you looked it up. Originally, when we voted to do 125,000 to the Miracle League, I kind of thought we were setting 25,000 out of that aside. But it seems like the motion didn't really clarify that. Um, can you read the motion again, Matt, just for the group?
Sorry, I stepped out for a moment, Paul. I'll have to locate it.
Okay, no problem. While you're looking for that, the other thing is in terms of the parks, I'm really rethinking a lot of things, and I'll talk about this kind of later, but the 115,000 for the community park shelter and the 15,000 for windscreens are something that I just don't think is necessary at this time. So I just want to put that out there, and we can talk more about that later.
Oh, we're talking about it now. This is the
Oh.
time to discuss, so.
Okay.
I have the motion.
Let's finish up
Paula.
with the Bakken Park
Sure.
removal, and then we'll jump into community park.
It was to approve the park improvement agreement with Miracle League for 125,000, and the village will do the removal of the current playground. And that was approved 6-0.
So we didn't necessarily say that it was 25,000 for the village, but I guess that was the spirit that I thought we had, versus taking it out of park funds. I guess the other question is, it's really dependent on the Miracle League raising the rest of the money. Like, I mean, this might not even happen next year, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's not going to come down until they have 100% of the funds raised for the project.
Yeah. I'll let Renee ask her question now.
Yeah, go ahead, Renee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Matt, for rereading that vote. I guess my memory, and I could be wrong too, was, and Sean had estimated that it would cost around 35,000 for the removal. We've discussed just what we've identified tonight about preserving as much as we could in the spirit of the volunteers. And going back to, I was going to ask too, what you did, Paula, about the 125,000. But we were, I believe, from Amazon, there was 150,000 allotment. Therefore, there was 25,000 left over. Take that off of the 35,000 that Sean estimated. So there would roughly be about $10,000 then that the village would be responsible for. And I too, I'm a bit reticent about doing anything at the community park. I'm wondering if we can't even put that off another year. And I agree, the $115,000 windscreens, I know that, Peter, you've addressed that earlier, but in the spirit of the overall budget, that's something that I'm really not much in favor of.
So the Budget Review Committee recommended moving the funding source to park development fees because I had brought up that donor-directed funding is likely not consistent with donor wishes for the removal of a playground. The building of a playground, I think we all agreed this summer, is something that aligns with donor wishes, but I think removing a playground is not an alignment. So that's where the movement of that funding to Park Development Fund came from. And if Sean or Cameron want to speak to the current state of the Park Development Fund, I think that maybe helps with the conversation a little bit as well.
Yeah, I can take that conversation. So after this expenditure, and I believe there was some consensus that 115 for community park should at least be dropped down to 100. So I'll factor that into this. So we're looking at, with that expenditure, there'd be between $50,000 and $75,000 of unrestricted park development funds. and about 140,000 that has to be used for a specific park location, because when somebody pulls a permit, certain areas have to be utilized for certain parks. So that's the overall state of the fund.
Renee
Okay.
has her hand back up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had, another question. I've brought this up before, and Sean, maybe if you could help me process through this one. I don't know if it's possible that any of the staff for Parks and Rec or Public Works and I don't know what goes on or how busy both department staffs are with. I know there's snow removal, etc., and winter duties, but I'm just curious if it's possible to be able to utilize any of our own staff to help defray any of the cost for this.
And discuss it, yeah, it's something that we looked at, Renee. I discussed it with Kyla, and the amount, again, this is gonna be a time-sensitive type of a scenario where we're gonna leave the current playground up as long as we can before the actual build starts. So for both of us to dedicate staff for the amount of time, I mean, when I got an estimate, they were figuring a week of nonstop work to remove the current playground. So for us to be able to throw that amount of staff at it for a short amount of time was not very feasible.
Okay, thank you for addressing that. Yeah, and I understand and I hear what you're saying, Sean, because I have very little understanding of what it takes for running your staff and both department staff, but I just didn't even know if that could be partially farmed out, but again, I hear what you're saying. It depends on when this all comes together as well. So thank you.
Paula, or we will do though, if this goes through, is that we will put, from the Parks and Rec standpoint, we will put as much staff on that to help as we can to try and keep that money, that dollar amount as low as possible.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
I think there had been a question too about where the park would be stored. You have,
Yep, anything that we don't that we don't use right away, we'll put in the red shed down at Bakken. Stack it all up, and that's part of what the company that's that would potentially remove this is just making sure that everything that we do collect is usable, and then stacking it in size piles, just so that we can keep it as minimal as possible and stack it all up.
all right.
So if we can go back maybe to Paula's question on community park, I know the shelter is in really bad shape, but again, we're up 4.6 CPI, or the index is up 2.65. So we're far exceeding the inflationary impact. So obviously, every dollar counts. And I guess the question that I would have is, if we were to defer this, what would the risk be for 1 year?
So because of where these funds are coming out of, this has zero impact on the levy. So this is being proposed to come out of, so it would just be the inflationary costs for the task order to complete the work. So Josh might be able to.
So it basically depletes fund balance, which obviously is dollars. So, I mean,
Sure.
the fact that it doesn't hit the levy, I guess, is less of a concern. I mean, obviously, that is a big concern for taxpayers, but again, if it gets deferred till next year and we cut the spending, I guess that makes sense.
And I think when this was put together, this was more so there were a lot of questions, I think, on the shelter, and a lot of questions on what we could do, what we could carve out, could we possibly phase this in? And so when this was originally brought forward, it was brought forward as a borrowing or capital, and that based off of the temperature of that project just wasn't there. So the Parks Committee ultimately recommended to use park development funds so it would have no impact on the levy. And so just because we do this in 2026 doesn't mean we necessarily move forward in 2027. I think the, monitoring kind of the economics of the community and other projects where things end up will be critical in kind of the future planning. But this was included in hopes to get the answers that were requested of us.
And I think in the original prioritization process that we went through, we had bumped it way out to 2030, 31, and then it got brought back because of the CivMec had raised some issues potentially with an audit they did. But then our legal team came back and said that the shelter is fine to be open and it's usable. So I think that kind of clarified some of the unknowns that happened this summer when we were kind of shifting the project back and forth. But Sean, if we do the A&E next year, the plans are good indefinitely, right? Like, so if we got pushed back out to 2030, it's still
Correct.
usable information now.
Correct.
And that's where Aaron would step in, contingent on any external factors that are put, planning, zoning, or any type of changes. But yes.
If I may, one point that I just want to make sure that everybody understands is you're obviously given two choices when you look back at the memo, either kind of fix up what we have or replace it. What we really need is direction as to if and when it's going to be replaced so that we know. I mean, the longer we push that out, the longer we need to make some sort of repairs if we're going to continue to use that facility. So we haven't done a lot of big things in that facility just because it's been in the plan. So if this board's intention is to push that out to 30 or 32 or whatever, we really need to look at spending some money to make that a little bit more accessible. So it's really just direction, moving forward. Obviously, the 115 for the A&E, but I know there's no guarantees, but we would like a plan.
And I know it's a highly used shelter. It's rented out. There's, the pickleball courts, the new playground. So the shelter is kind of the last missing piece in that park. I guess knowing that it can be rented out and we don't have that liability, I don't actually have a problem kind of pushing that out a little bit back to my original thinking, because I think that was my thought, was the 2030 back this summer. Paula, go ahead.
I agree, Cindy. I think we can definitely push it back. I look at, and I think Lisa provided like the usage numbers with that shelter. And honestly, if I'm, especially a parent with children, I am going to probably pick Bach and Park over that shelter, right? So I think we definitely should just remove the line item and then push it back.
I agree. This is Renee. I think that's a good course of action.
Would you still want to do the A&E next year? Line item.
I would be in favor of removing the entire line item for now.
I would agree.
If we remove the line item, how much do we got to spend? I mean, that's kind of the circular question. How much do we have to spend minimally? I know you came with like a life extension of like 5 years, but realistically, what is the maintenance that has to be done?
We would have to really dive into that to see exactly accessibility is the biggest part about it, is getting people in. Josh, can you help if we were just looking at accessibility into the shelter?
But hold on.
Yeah,
Hold on. I thought accessibility, unless we do major repairs or renovation, wasn't required. If we go in and do major renovation or repairs, that's when we trigger an ADA, an accessibility upgrade, right?
Correct. Yeah, we're not required to do anything, but if we want to improve accessibility, we need to get that in.
But if we're gonna just wait a couple years, we're not gonna spend money on that of any appreciable amount.
Correct. That's why I had asked, let's pick a direction on where we're going so that we know if we're going to do anything. If it's a 10-year out, then we need to do something. If it's not, we don't.
Well, maybe we can go back in time to the prioritization in June where we had it slated for a certain year, and then we had new information come about, which is why it got bumped up. So now that we know that we are still able to have rentals and use the facility as it is right now, can we look, I think that was the 2030.
Yeah, I mean, it was in 2031 at some point. So is there consensus that this should be removed for 2026? As we're kind of, am I seeing a majority nods? I'm seeing Heidi nod, Paula, Renee.
Yeah, I think there's majority to take it out for 2026. I think we do need to have a larger discussion though, and I think when we originally had that prioritization discussion in June, it was, here are a bunch of options, where do you think the direction should go? And then all of a sudden it was like, bam, in. And so it'd be nice to, bring that back and have an actual conversation about scope and slating it in the next prioritization, I guess. Since we're not putting it in this year, let's discuss it again in June and see where we end up.
So kind of staff recommendation would be going back to Parks and Rec Committee and then bring something forward to the board? Is that what the board's looking for here?
And I think for the prioritization process, I mean, there's no rush to do it
Yeah.
between now and June when we go through the process again. But let's see, with a 7-person board, maybe we can slate that for a year and then go through the budget process next year.
Okay, so I have a resolution on that item. Can we go back and tie up the Bakken Park removal? I feel like there's still a bunch of back and forth on what the intent of that is.
I think there's general agreement that we go ahead and remove it and do the best to reuse what we got.
So maintaining alignment with the Budget Review Committee. So right now, the only change would be the removal of the community park shelter A&E design.
And then and then
And the pickleball wind.
Pickleball.
Oh, now we're gonna, well, let's talk about the pickleball wind screens.
Yeah, I think we have a number of organizations that have really partnered with the Parks and Rec Department to help, make these improvements to our facilities that make them more usable for groups. And so, I think it would be reasonable to, we have a pickleball advisory committee to take it to them and say, yeah, we recognize that this would be a benefit to the park. How would you like to work on fundraising for that item? I think it's reasonable to take that back to that group, to talk to them about how they could help make that a possibility in the future.
So you're aligned with removing it and coming up with alternative ways to fund that kind of improvement, which is, quite honestly, they're very usable 95% of the time.
What if it was half that and considered a match, and then they fundraise the second half?
I think that's an innovative way to go about it, but, I'll be honest with you, Bakken Park has windscreens, right? And so we've got 8 state-of-the-art courts that have windscreens. The community park has, on the western edge, where most of the prevailing winds are out of, there's a very large line of bushes or foliage that really protects it. I'll be honest with you, I play there a lot. I've never had a problem with wind. And again, I'm not a 5-0, but, I do play, and we do have
It
facilities.
means nothing to me, 5-0. I don't play pickleball.
Yeah,
Is that like
but those are
elite?
the higher end players are the ones that are more sensitive
Okay.
to, the sun is in the wrong spot. One of the things, if you think about that court, is it was set up wrong because if you're on the east side of the court, you're facing to the west. So we really should build a shade. There's so many things that you could do, and I just don't see it as adding that much. And if like you said, some of our community organizations, if they want to fundraise, I think that's the best approach.
I'm seeing consensus to remove it.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I agree. I think Heidi has a great idea by seeing if the people will fundraise, so I would support that.
Consensus to remove that one then? Yeah. All right, the next I had on the list was just discussion about the vehicle and direction on the mower.
I would say we want the most flexibility possible in a vehicle, that it can be used for all the things that the department needs rather than having to, borrow a pickup from Public Works to do this. Not that we can't, be a good team, but it would be nice to have the Parks and Rec vehicle be able to do all the things that you need, transport staff to different things, get equipment different places, also, our other maintenance equipment. Like, it'd be nice to have a flexible vehicle, so I think whatever the best value is that we can get for a flexible vehicle that'll fulfill a lot of needs, I think, would be the direction I'd give on how to replace the Jeep. Maybe something more flexible than the Jeep, which you can't always haul stuff around in.
Yeah, and obviously the other part of the too is just making sure that it works for other departments as well, because we do share vehicles, so want something that would be beneficial to Public Works or whomever.
Renee, go ahead.
Yeah, and I brought this up before, I would be interested in factoring a cost for a Honda minivan or, something in that direction, which can haul a lot of people and yet haul equipment when needed as well.
I guess allocated funds with a maximum and let the department decide, again, working with their colleagues on what is best suited. I am an avid minivan user though, so. Other thoughts on this?
Cindy, I like your idea of saying, here's X amount of dollars. You do the research and find what's most cost effective and efficacious for transporting and hauling equipment.
So I think that's all I had for parks, unless we wanted to also talk about the direction on the mower too. The Toro. It's kind of similar. I guess my thoughts are similar with the minivan versus Jeep, Toro versus whatever the other options are, so.
It's going to be exactly the same process where we'll look for the best piece of equipment for what we're doing.
Okay.
Just one thing I'll just add real quick. So at the end of the year, I've found, and departments have found, they're a little bit more hungry to offload equipment. So a lot of the times we can find really good deals at the end of the year if we pre-order something or get in right at the end of the year. So subsequent to the budget approval, on November 17th, really the direction is to all the departments is to go find the cheapest equipment, cheapest quality equipment within the budget parameters. And I think I harassed them pretty good on making sure that they've evaluated multiple different options.
Right. So that's the list for parks. We also should have a discussion about the comp plan update. There was some discussion maybe of starting mid-year. Obviously, housing chapter needs to finish their work. I think that this is coming in at a good time and it's necessary, so I'm definitely for doing a comp plan update.
No, go for it.
Oh, Chris,
I was just gonna say, I think it's sorely needed. I mentioned this in budget review, but the last time it was updated was 2020, and then we had the census right after that, and so it was immediately out of date. The comp plan right now estimates Cottage Grove's population in 2040 to be 9,490, and the Department of Administration estimated this year's population to be 9,470, so we're 70 off, 15 years ahead, so it's pretty out of date.
I guess I'd look for some flexibility on how this timing works with, how the housing chapter, how that flow goes because of, you know, complications with staffing at the county. So I don't want to hold things up too long if we're going to need to carry some of that as part of the update. I just don't want to delay waiting on things outside of our control when I do think that, yeah, the comprehensive plan needs to be updated. But I also don't want to duplicate work because of that update also. So however we can best do the flow of the comprehensive plan update along with the housing chapter.
Go ahead, Paula.
I like the idea of maybe starting a little bit later in the year and kind of rolling it over to budget years, because I think the other piece of this is Stoughton, for instance, is going through their comp plan, and they're doing a really nice job with lots of public engagement and surveys and just different things. They did at their chamber, they did kind of an exercise with everybody at the chamber meeting. And so I think, you know, it'd be good to take our time, have a well thought out process and, you know, allow for us to get kind of at least the housing piece done. So could we half the costs and kind of, the other piece is too, like Cindy, you mentioned a 7-person board is, you know, in April, obviously the dynamic of the board could change, and we want to allow for a little time for any potential new board members to get up to speed. So.
Just based off of, I'll handle the cost. There's no benefit to increasing or decreasing what's in the budget because it's not funds that are levied for. So we would just adjust obviously within what the timeline is. So however the vendor would bill us would be the cost for 2026 and then remaining cost in 2027.
So it wouldn't be levied, it'd be borrowed?
Not at all. It's cash on hand.
So the 410 capital, the 100,000 would come from?
Yep. Not a dollar that's borrowed for or levied for.
In terms of timeline, do you think that would the board interview candidates? Would you select one?
As of now, my goals are for me to recommend a consultant to the board, but if the board wants to interview.
I was just thinking back to the strategic plan, which I still think is a really great idea. But if, you know, by the time we got through all of the budget season and then we brought in like the 2 options, interviewed them, it was March already, and then there would have been a new board and then we would have started. So I could see a similar timeline, kind of like a intermediate between starting kind of mid-year and starting right away.
I think ultimately whatever gets decided, so the stormwater study will have public participation. The revaluation will have public participation, and so I think the intent of having it in the 2026 budget was to try to do as most bang for our bucks on our communications for when meetings are, how to collect. So that's why it was presented in the format it was.
That makes sense, Cameron. You know, the other piece is, that's a lot of information for citizens to take in, right? On all 3 of those things. And so I think, you know, we certainly could modify the communications to say, oh, and, you know, the comp plan is coming next, and, you know, watch your email and such for that, so that we can kind of piggyback off that, but spread it out a little bit, because I mean, that's a lot of information to take in.
So we'll leave the funding in. I would prefer to leave the full funding in. I know there was discussion on half. Okay. And then just kind of depending on workflow and scheduling, I think, what do you think?
I'd like to keep it all in. I mean, based on how quickly the housing update has gone, it's probably not going to happen until halfway through the year anyway. but I think it'd be better to keep it in, just in case.
When we do an RFP, we'll include in there our kind of timeframe for implementation, so we'll kind of, they'll be able to kind of map out how that cost will come forward, so we'll have a pretty good feeling what that'll look like, so the board can make that kind of final decision later,
That's a
if
good
that's
idea.
okay.
Yeah, and that gives us then, Paula, a little bit more control over timeline at that stage.
So it's all cash on hand anyway, so we would just carry it over into 2027 if, the project's going half and half or something like that.
Correct. So 410 is a result of investment income, some franchise fees collections. So it's funds that we have had that just carry over as a result of positive performance. So it's able to pull away from anything that we borrow for, and can kind of supplement that. So most communities, like a revaluation, for example, that we just did, like $126,000 is significant. And the fact that we didn't have to add that to the levy or borrow is pretty significant.
All right, then the last item to discuss is all the capital items for the police station and the police department. I think, Paula, do you want to?
Yeah, so,
Breakfast.
one of the things that is kind of reframing the budget process for me. I know I was on LEC and we kind of discussed these items, but, a lot of things changed from when we started this process until now. And I just mean kind of globally, like the lens that I have to look through is that people are kind of struggling. And so I'm really kind of going through this exercise in my mind of what is a want and what is a need. And I think some of the items in the police capital requests are more in the bucket of wants. And I think, we are making a pretty substantial, a very substantial investment in the department with the police station that I really think I would like to punt on probably all of these items, or at least most of them. But like I said earlier, I'm curious as to why Chris voted the way he did in budget review, and so maybe he can speak to that a little bit.
Chris, if you feel comfortable.
I didn't have a problem with most of the capital things. What we did at budget review is we separated the police station out. So I voted against that, as I've talked about several times. So I didn't really have any issues with like the squads or anything like that. It was the police station that I voted against.
For that clarification.
Heidi, go ahead.
So just to go through the list here. So we have the new squads. So this is 2 new squads, one of which is replacing the other one, which we're anticipating insurance would then cover that. So then the other one would be replacing one of our other squads, keeping it in rotation. And so the maintenance for an older squad gets to be expensive, so that's why we want to keep the squads in rotation.
That was
for
one of the
pushing.
things when I got here, is to get onto a rotation plan so that we were truly maximizing the life of the squad before it started chewing up our budget and maintenance.
And we had voted or given direction on the 2 new squads back this summer, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so then the other that was included in our presentation, so we have the firearm replacement, which we talked about a little bit ago. Pete asked about that. The tornado siren, so that's adding a 3rd siren in an area that's undercovered right now, is that?
That is correct. And that was also guidance of implementation earlier this summer.
Okay. And then the live scan fingerprint, that was taken out of the budget, and then we'll reassess with the construction costs, how things are coming in
That is
in the new
correct.
building?
Or
Okay.
we would expect to see it in the 27 budget.
Yes.
So that one's already out. And the drone is out. The flat cameras, so we talked a little bit about that before, and those are the missing person, stolen vehicle, license plate readers that we have at the entrances, so that's expanding that program.
Yes, and also burglaries. We were able to solve a few burglaries with those cameras.
So right now there's 7, we're gonna add 2 to get us to the 22.5. So,
Right, we'll add 2 this year, and then the 10th one would be in 2027.
so where are the 2 gonna go?
I don't want to disclose exact location for strategic reasons, but again, to give us the best information of the vehicle travels throughout the village.
Okay, and then the final thing is the miscellaneous items. So like new hires, get the equipment that they need. And then the emergency entry tools.
And that, again, we had that in last year's budget that equipped some of the squads. This is to get all the squads, so no matter what car is out on the road, it has the tools when it's needed, at the time it's needed.
Okay, so that kind of summarizes all the capital. So a couple things were cut already, so the things that that we're potentially talking about would be 1 vehicle, the firearms, the tornado siren, and then the miscellaneous equipment. Did I miss?
Flat cam.
And the flat cameras.
All right.
Okay.
Let's take this, I guess, one at a time. So, I mean, police station construction, obviously, we've approved a bid, so I feel like we are, all the board's on the same page, perhaps. And so we don't need to talk about that unless you want to have another special meeting. I'm just kidding. Let's talk about the new squads and upfitting then. We had approved that this summer.
So, again, as we've discussed several times, it's getting them into, right now, we have originally, the plan would have been replacing the 2021 and the 2022 squad. Unfortunately, the 2022 squad has been decommissioned already, and we will work on getting the replacement covered through insurance with minimal impact.
So I guess does the amount in the presented budget need to reflect 2 cars, knowing that one is an insurance claim?
Yes, please.
Yeah, but does that come out of 411?
Yes, because the corresponding revenue will offset. So remember, when we're looking at expenditures here, not net borrowing. So a lot of what's in the budget is we present the best estimated cost, and those get refined right before the borrowing. So we would reflect essentially the net of the insurance proceeds.
So technically, we're approving 1 new squad as a part of the rotation.
Correct.
Technically.
Correct.
Okay.
Renee, you have your hand up. I don't want to miss you.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the firearm and equipment replacement. So I agree that firearms and law enforcement is a critical decision as written. And I'm just wondering, I know Chief Gary that you had mentioned that it's more cost effective to do it all at once rather than piecemeal, but what would the cost be if you did maybe half this year and half next year? Is that going to be a major savings, or what would those numbers look like?
Unfortunately, different firearm systems. So now you're talking a different, I know it seems very basic, a gun is a gun is a gun, but again, when you're looking at it from a piece of equipment that's used on a daily basis, i.e. carried on a daily basis, the training aspect of it, some of the changes in the firearms, there have been modifications in the sense I reference in the memo about updates to technology and equipment. And again, having the department on 2 different operating systems would not be, one, cost effective from even a trade-in, but also from a training aspect.
So you're
And
losing
I also-
efficiencies and
Yes.
it's a safety issue.
There's also, and again, I'm not a doomsday guy, but there's also a liability aspect of it. Because should the officer utilize their firearm and they have the older firearm and it malfunctions, one of the things is going to be questioned of, well, why did Officer A have this operating system and Officer B had this operating system?
So if these guns are 5 years old, why wouldn't we just buy the same model? Same caliber, same model, minimizes training, allows us to potentially do this without running into those issues?
Because there's been advancements in weaponry that
Is
are,
it-
that would truly be beneficial to the officers and the community.
You're telling me in 5 years, it's changed that much that we would, I mean, a gun does one thing.
But it's also the things that are part of that.
Why
That's why it says equipment. So like, I'll just use the simple red dot, okay, which is a aiming device. Some of the guns that we currently carry do not have the capacity to have that technology. That technology, though, truly is beneficial for limiting collateral damage from the use of said weapon.
But the guns that do have the red dot, why wouldn't that be the standard that we would migrate to, minimizing the need to do a wholesale replacement?
We don't have any right now, none.
So really the question for the board is, do you want to keep the firearm and equipment replacement in this year or take it out of the budget? We're not going to half it or do bits and pieces. Oh, Renee, go ahead.
Sorry, I meant to lower my hand. I guess I'm curious as to how often weapons are fired. Is that information that you can share that within the last 5 years, how much has that occurred?
Well, it occurs in training since I've been here on a semi-annual basis. Again, that's department training. I have, again, officers that go out and train on their own, so I can't speak to the extent that they utilize it. I can tell you, knock on wood, there has not been an officer-involved shooting in the village of Cottage Grove since I've been here or prior to my tenure. And I hope it stays that way for the next millennium. But I can't promise that.
Right, no, that you can't predict the future, I agree with that. I am not in favor of doing the replacing the firearms this year and would like to defer that.
Follow-up question. With the training chief, has anybody's weapons failed or malfunctioned? And then if so, what has the common practice been like? Let's say I go shooting at the range tomorrow, it doesn't work. I say, hey chief, my gun didn't work yesterday. What's the process now?
So yes, we have had, when they do that, we take them out of service. We determine what causes the malfunction. If it's a piece or part that can be replaced or repaired, we do that. If it's not, then it is truly purchasing a new firearm. Again, what I'm trying to accomplish here for the village is getting a program where you can start to plan for the future, i.e. have a weapon in service for approximately 10 years so that you can properly budget and plan for that replacement. That has not existed prior to this. So that's why I said Currently, we have some that are 5 years old. We have some, I said 10. I can actually tell you, I know of one that's 14 years old. Again, it's trying to plan appropriately for the future so that you're not all of a sudden hit with a big price tag without knowing it's coming down the road.
Heidi, go ahead.
I'm not in favor of delaying this. We ask our police officers to put their lives on the line every single day to keep our community safe, to keep students at our schools safe, every visitor to our community safe. And if we can't provide the equipment that they need and feel confident in, I think that that's, a recipe for, potentially, something going wrong in the field. And this is, I know every dollar matters, and when we're talking about budgeting, this is not a huge line item. I think that our officers that are out there risking their lives should have the equipment that they need to provide the service that we expect from them. So I'm in favor of keeping this in.
Renee, you have your hand up.
Thank you for pointing out the safety, Heidi. I have two more questions for Chief Gary. One is you had mentioned that, yes, there are times when older weapons, they malfunction and then you have to look into that. How often does that happen with the weapons that you have? And this is probably, don't laugh at me when I ask this question because I don't know a whole lot about guns, but handguns, is it true or false, and maybe in between, that the more rounds that you use or fire them, whether it be in training, target shooting or whatever, that it becomes more of a better piece of equipment, if you will, if that makes sense.
So I'll touch on the second half of your question. A better weapon, shall we say, due to training is because the officers become more accustomed to it, and the functionality of it, and also their basically use of said piece of equipment, similar to anything else, everybody gains proficiency the more they utilize something. So that's where that comes into play. Specifically, how many times have we had weapons go down due to malfunctions? I don't have a specific number for you. Again, my tenure here has been just a few years. I can tell you that I know of at least 3 trainings where I've seen a weapon have to be taken out of service for minor malfunctions that were corrected in-house. Knock on wood, again, we have not had to replace said weapon, but I can tell you from my past experience, I did have times where literally we had to take the weapon completely out of service and get a complete replacement.
So you kind of touched on that this is a cost-effective way to replace equipment for the entire department. It reduces liability. It gives our officers what they need to perform their job safely. Sounds like this makes it an efficient replacement process financially, and then in terms of making sure everything is kind of uniform within the department. So I'm also not in favor of deferment. Paula, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I see, especially officer safety, citizen safety. I think for me, I'm just looking at, are there things that, if we had to say, you've got these 5 capital items and prioritize, I guess maybe I'm just wanting to have a dialogue too with Heidi. Like, if that's kind of like the number one, is there one that maybe isn't a high priority that we can defer? you know, I think about the equipment and the entry tools and, you know, the fact that I believe that our fire trucks also have them on it and it is in some squads, like, I'm not sure that it needs to be in every squad. So, right, like that's a little bit of a different conversation as well as the cameras. So I guess I could see sticking with the firearms cost, but let's talk about the other things. And also if there are grants for other things like the tornado siren.
So we're in agreement that fire, along with the police station and the 2 squads. So then, yeah, let's talk about tornado siren is kind of next on the list. This was approved through LEC, and then I think it came back to the village board too for the third, is this the third siren? Yeah, that we had talked about previously.
And
do you want to maybe talk a little bit about the coverage of the siren, like where the gap is right now and how this fills part of the gap that exists for the residents that live here?
Sure.
And people visiting and whoever's out when there's a tornado?
So currently we have one siren that's located 1 block away here from Village Hall. Our second siren was placed over off of Damascus in Pheasant Run to cover the open areas around that area and the schools. Our deficiencies for siren coverage, and again, it's because of the topography of the village itself that impacts how far the sound truly travels. We have the southern end of the village that is not covered by any siren, and we have the northern end of the village that's not covered by any siren. This third siren, we prioritized the southern end down by Bakken. Again, the whole purpose behind tornado sirens or emergency warning sirens is related to the individuals that are outside. It's not related to people that are inside their residence. It's to cover the open spaces. Again, eventually, yes, we could envision moving one up to the north end. We also could envision taking the one that's right here and potentially moving it a little to the eastern edge of the village, a little further, so that they're all overlapping each other. But again, we get our data and our information from the company that installs the sirens because they're the experts in it. Related to grants, we're always seeking any grant for anything that we can get to help offset the cost and expense to the village. At this time, there is nothing that's been made available that we're aware of, but we will keep exploring those opportunities. And usually we get that information from the vendor because the vendors are the ones that know if they inform us, they have a good chance of actually making the sale and making their money. So they're always in the front end of trying to let us know about those things.
Paul, I think you have your hand up. I guess my question for you is, where do you envision removing this, and then would we put it back in? Would there be a gap? How do you?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's a great idea. I think 2 things. One, really that tornado siren is also going to benefit our neighbors in the township. So I know, I just saw your nonverbals, Cindy. I know. It's a tough conversation to have, and but I do think at the very least, we should at least ask if they'd be willing to share any of the cost. I also would like us to see if we can get a Wisconsin Emergency Management grant for this. You know, and as part of our, whatever our future emergency management efforts are, you know, I think there's some other adjustments that could be made too. So I think we could wait a little bit on this one. Obviously too, we're not in tornado season anymore. So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
I guess when you look at the long-term planning of the math behind find English, that's why I'm looking at you. I think that, yeah, this has been an identified need from the emergency management, planning, that, and has gone through LEC, and we've discussed it here. And again, with our projected growth and new developments that are kind of on the horizon, it makes sense to install it. But open it up to the rest of the committee for discussion.
I guess I'm in favor of seeking any grant money we can utilize for, to help offset costs for any of the items that we talked about tonight, really. But if there's some particular that could help with the tornado siren, I guess I'm just not sure that the best, from my opinion, to sacrifice potential safety of residents. Like I think that investing in these things is really, really critical to make sure people can get to somewhere safely. I know tornado season isn't right now, but it, comes up pretty quick in April, which isn't, all that far off in our planning world and certainly within this budget period. So I guess I'm just not in favor of cutting things that, risk safety of those that are here in the village.
I would say it doesn't necessarily risk safety because obviously we don't have one right now, right? So it's not like we're cutting something that we already have. And if part of the, justification is future development, then is there a way to tie it into when that development happens? I think society's a little bit different. That's not necessarily a farming area, that's parks, and everybody's got a smartphone on them. So I don't know. I'm just looking for ways to try to save some money and potentially even get us like under, to be closer to what the CPIU is in terms of our budget. Just knowing people are struggling. So those are my thoughts.
So I'm just going to put some context. It's not going to change the expenditures that are reported on that summary page. So one of the other things I will mention too is as part of that annual allocation, I'm working with departments to try to get a 10-year plan put together. So we came in significantly under the $1,051,000 kind of allocated for this year. 2028, everybody needs to remember that is when our ladder truck's coming in. And then 2027, a big purchase is our street sweeper. So trying to make sure we're not, especially those 2 years, deferring anything in our capital plan to those years would possibly put future years at risk. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that in the overall planning.
So Cameron, then a follow up on that. So cutting like the 50,000 for the tornado siren. So that's a capital expense that we borrow for the life of what we think this siren is. So I don't know, how long is that, 5-10 years? I mean, that's more than the life, but what do we borrow?
We would probably, I would talk with Ellers, but we'd probably assign that one a 10-year, even though it'd be 15 or 20. So we wouldn't actually start, it wouldn't have a budgetary impact until 2027. So on all of these purchases won't have a budget impact in 26. 27 is the first year that they'll be effective.
Okay, and that would, so do you have, asking you to calculate this on the fly is probably too much, but like what estimated impact would something like that amount have on our future debt payments?
Minimum. Okay. I mean, everything adds. I think it's hard when we look at that individually, but I think, so I'm just trying to do the math, 10/3 of that cost. So like roughly probably 3,500 or 3,600. So $1.70 on the average home.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But we would borrow for it.
Correct.
Yeah, so 50 million, throw 50, every dollar counts. But
Yeah.
again, I'm kind of more in the camp of establishing our infrastructure to provide that early warning. So I'm more in favor of this one, less in favor of maybe some of the others. Like the entry tools, you know, I think we need them. But I mean, at the end of the day, if they don't have the entry tools, what does that mean? Same thing with the body cams, same thing with the traffic monitoring equipment. So I do think there's some other things that I would be more in favor of discussing.
Okay. So are we leaning towards majority leaving tornado siren in? Yeah. Okay. Then yeah, so the live scan is out. The drone program is out. The flock cameras is on the list to discuss.
Yeah, you know, I guess we got 7, it's $2,500 a year. I guess if we deferred the 2 incremental, that would cut $5,000, I guess. Because I don't know where they're at, and I'm not gonna know where they're at.
I'll gladly talk to you offline.
Yeah. I guess I would wonder if we could, I'm assuming the 7 are in the best strategic locations, existing. That's an assumption. Okay.
I'd like to cover some gaps that we have.
I understand, and I'd love to put in 20 of them, right? But there's the reality of we're 4.7% increase over a 2.65 CPI. So I mean, obviously, anything we can do to cut it without significantly compromising the things we need to do, like firearms, like tornado sirens. This is an investigational tool. There are more Ring cameras in the village of Cottage Grove than probably most communities. And those are useful, not necessarily going to get you a license plate number, but you do have 7 that can do that. So, I mean, I would be in favor of deferring the 2 incremental cameras.
Is there a way to phase the expansion to 1 in 26, 1 in 27, and 1 in 28?
I would have to check with the vendor to see. Again, this was the strategic plan that we had put in place back in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't speak for the vendor themselves.
Chief, do we have a contract with the vendor to add these already, or, okay, so we'd be trying to renegotiate the contract with them?
Yes.
Again, thank you for reminding me that this was part of an approved strategic plan from 2023, and it's now moving into 2026. I guess given that I just read the paragraph in detail and did see that, I would be in favor of keeping the flat cameras along with the continued phased plan. Other comments from board members?
I kind of like your idea of phasing it. I mean, the strategic plan is a strategic plan, but it's not, a funded plan. So we're talking about making some tough decisions.
What happens
I'd
if
like
it's
to defer.
not?
I'd like to defer both of them, but I mean, I think if we were able to sequence them 1 a year, I guess that makes more sense to me.
If there's efficiencies that can be made from the vendor, though, for buying the 2 this year, I'm wondering if we should leave it in as the full amount with the staff direction to investigate the phased with an additional year. And if we're not going to, if
My
there's,
understanding
like,
is a
some
service
type of
contract.
economic-
My understanding is the $2,500 a year is a service contract. It includes maintenance, operation, installation of the first system. Any further replacements, there could be a cost, right?
So again, the plan, because of the way we structured this, it's 25 for each installation, yes. If I go back, there's a possibility they may say, well, now you're going to have to increase to this price point. I can't speak for them. Like I said, I know there's other municipalities out there that are now paying over 3,000. So I'm happy to explore it. I'm happy to give feedback.
But in terms of direction for the budgets, leaving the full amount with then just staff direction for you to just give us feedback or to look into it, is that?
I guess I would hate for us to say, now we need to change our contract and now we don't have this pricing from such and such year. Now it's gonna cost us more to have less. I just don't know the details of the contract to be able to say if it's a better deal to, if each one's gonna cost 3,000 annual cost, now that we have a new contract rather than the old contract that said that we'll be adding to in 2026. I guess I don't know if, I don't want it to cost more by deferring the additional cameras for later.
So we only have 7 under contract right now. It's an annual contract with a $2,500 per camera cost, right? It's kind of similar to Johnson Controls when they put security cameras in. They cover everything and it's part of the hosting fee, correct? And we have 7 under contract?
We have 7 under contract with the anticipation of adding 3 more by the end of the contract.
When you say anticipation, explain that.
The anticipation of this plan, of the implementation in this order as outlined in the memo.
So has the vendor got some sort of communication from us that there will be 3 more, and that's factored into the pricing?
Back in 2023.
So that contract said that this is the pricing based on this schedule, but the contract itself is only for 7.
The contract was for 10 total.
We signed a contract putting us on the hook for 10. That's a different story.
That's what the contract was when we signed it.
Well, then this is non-negotiable. I mean, if we signed a contract and agreed to it, then why are we even talking about it?
I think we just solved the problem. Okay. Sounds like we'll be keeping the flat cameras as outlined in the contract from 2023. All right, let's talk about the miscellaneous items then. Do you just take them one by one? Body armor.
Body armor, each officer is issued body armor. Again, if we don't use all the funds return, but we also get a grant, reimbursement grant for 50% of the body armor. Obviously, that's run by the federal government, which at times is questionable, I'll say. But they just opened up the grant period again, so we'll be submitting to try and get reimbursement. Again, depending on how we hire, who we hire, who's retained, that type of thing. That's why that amount is in there. Related to handheld radios, again, this is outfitting the officers with said radios as I'm wearing. Truly, we've had radios that have gone down. You have to replace them. You have batteries. We just, actually this last year, I invested in batteries for the radios. So again, just general upkeep. Body worn cameras. Every officer is issued a body worn camera. Those at the moment are fully operational and working well. This is to ensure that we have the funds available should one of those go down. The emergency entry tools and equipment. Again, I completely understand the idea that not every squad needs it, except on the reverse of that is when it is needed and you don't have it, that's a huge issue. I also understand that, yes, the fire department does have this equipment, so does Deer Grove EMS for some of the equipment, which is beneficial. Unfortunately, they're not always the first ones on the scene. So having these tools available when they're needed in the time of emergency are essential. The traffic monitoring equipment and services, that's related to the various speed signs and message boards that the police department has. I'm not speaking for Public Works message boards. Again, just general maintenance, upkeep, and replacement. Some of the speed boards that are out there currently are at the end of their life cycle, just due to what age and weather, the toll it takes on them. So that's what all that covers in the miscellaneous. Trying to be proactive.
Yeah, the body armor, radios, and cameras were for new hires, and we did remove the 2 police positions. So is this something that could then be moved to the future years?
It could potentially, again, without the new hires, completely understand that. Part of the concern is I'll take, if I have to replace current equipment, it'll come out of general operating versus having the miscellaneous.
I think that's a risk we take. I mean, if the body armor was for new hires, I think
Well, the body armor is not solely for new hires. We also replace body armor every 5 years. So we have officers that are coming up for replacement.
in 2026.
6.
So perhaps that 4,500 would be, that's maximum, it would be less given the grant, and then that we're not, for sure not hiring the 2 new, so it would just be the replacement cost.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I don't know much about body armor, but if it get replaced every 5 years, what kind of wear and tear does that have?
Truly, that's how long the manufacturers of body armor will warranty the safety of it.
What do you mean by warranty?
They warranty the safety of it, i.e. that it will perform to what its specifications, that's set by federal standards, and that's required of all body armor. The wear and tear on it is actually the body secretions, i.e. the sweat and everything that breaks down the material.
And these are issued and dedicated per officer, right?
Yes.
So it's their,
Form fitted.
and there's not a cover that they can clean?
There is a cover that, but it's still, that's the life of body armor is 5 years.
One follow-up on that. So we're talking about for new hires, but are there any there's a current vacancy in the department or not? Or is there a current vacancy?
We have 2 vacancies at this moment, so.
Okay. So they're not technically new hires, but we will have new, like it's not
New
expanding,
officers.
but we will have new officers in those. Okay.
Yes.
And can you reuse? I mean, if the outer part can be clean, can it be reassigned to another officer?
No, they're custom cut.
So we have controls in place for a new officer. So if they leave within the first year, we can recover 2/3 of the cost, and then, or sorry, all the costs in the first year, 2/3 the second year, 1/3 the third, up to $5,000 of value. So those controls are in place for turnover. I wanted to make sure the board was aware we're not making these significant investments and not protecting ourselves.
So how much does 4,500 get us? 2, 3? I mean,
Currently, body armor is running at about just over $1,000, about $1,100 a person.
this is about 4. And how many were up for replacement this year?
Off the top of my head, I believe we have minimum of 2. That is correct.
So that number is about accurate, but hopefully direction here is to look for, or to apply for the grant.
Always apply for the grant.
What about the radios then? Is that for new hires specifically, or is that also for replacements for existing?
That was for potential new hires / replacement of existing, i.e. if I get a radio that goes fin up mid-year, to have the funds available.
Okay.
Again, I'm not gonna spend anything that does, just to spend it. I think Cameron can attest to that.
I guess I'm assuming you have a couple extra radios right now, right?
No,
No extra radios.
no,
So then it's a matter of, really, the thing that fails on a radio is the battery.
not always.
Switches, the handsets, yeah, I mean, but for the most part, the electronics in the guts of a Motorola, I don't know what brand they are, but typically it's the handsets and the batteries.
Typically, it is, but we've had circuitry, and yes, they are Motorola's, and they're
So if there are
reliable.
So if there are no new officers, $9,500, if we didn't replace radios and we just put money in for radio maintenance,
Or a handheld is about 4,500.
but again, if we were just to put money in for maintenance, I don't know, I'm just trying to be very cognizant of what we're doing here.
Completely understand.
So what number would you put towards that, I guess?
I think clearly some radio maintenance, some handsets and some batteries is definitely needed. Maybe one radio and some, I don't know. I mean, I would look to your advisement as far as and again, you're saying we need 2 radios. If we're not hiring any new officers, I guess the question is, can we be a little more diligent on what we're asking for?
If you want to cut it down to 5,000 for a handset and maintenance.
So we have to be a little careful because the way that this is presented is that this would be part of the collective borrowing. So if you're shifting this, that would increase the levy if there wasn't a corresponding contraction or subtraction.
Say that again?
So as I had mentioned, any funds that are borrowed for in 26, the first repayment is in 27. You can't borrow for maintenance on equipment. That has to come from levy funds or cash on hand. So this would actually, by shifting some of this to maintenance, it would actually increase the levy for however much you're shifting for 2026.
But technically, it increases the useful life of the asset, so it would be capital. Could be, right? It's de minimis to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, it does increase the life of the asset.
Quarles is going to disagree with that statement, unless it's like a significant.
Because you're saying it's de minimis, but at the end of the day, my guy would say, okay, it extends useful life, we can lump it as capital.
So do you want to leave it in as 5K for a new radio, just half the amount?
I'm good with that if you're.
Okay. And then body worn cameras for 2,000. I feel like we're playing Jeopardy now.
Again, currently, all our systems are operational.
Is this for new hires as well, or is this for replacement, I guess?
For potential replacement if we have cameras go down.
Okay.
How much is the camera?
About 800 last time I looked.
No maintenance on it. Okay.
This is capital, right, Cam?
Leave it? Okay. The emergency entry tools and equipment.
I know there's all these things we need, we want, and I guess is it something that we've had situations where fire and or EMS wasn't there and we had to have emergency entrance and we had to wait? Have we had that? I'm just curious.
Again, I'll knock on wood. No, I'll knock on wood. But I don't want to talk about some of the tragedies that have occurred in Dane County where those items were utilized and needed to be utilized. And again, it's nothing against any of the public safety partners we have, but they're not always the first ones on the scene, nor are they the ones that should be going in.
And right now, how many squads are equipped with this equipment?
Right now, we have 3 fully equipped with a 4th that has a couple pieces of equipment. equipment.
Is there a way to operationally make sure that at least one squad on duty has the current equipment?
We always try to put those out as the primaries. The downside is if the officer gets tied up on another call for service, they may not be the one that's responding.
Seems like a reasonable risk to take.
This is a decision that, again, I have my viewpoint on it. I want somebody coming through that door when they need to come through that door.
Can we acquire another set to make sure that both, because you have multiple sets in here, is there a way to somehow ensure that both squads would have it for each shift? Or are they movable?
They're movable. Again, we have 3 squads that are fully upfitted. But again, that doesn't mean that they're not committed to something else when that incident occurs. That's the downside. In the world I live in the world that EMS lives in the world that fire lives in, you want the piece of equipment that you need when you need it.
No,
So
I mean, I agree with that statement. I get nervous with the risk.
How long does it take to move it from one vehicle to another? I mean, so if we, typically we're targeting to have 2 up to 3 squads patrolling at any given time. So if one of those squads is out of service because of maintenance or whatever, why would we not just move that equipment so that the active squads all have it without having to spend $13,500?
I'm not saying out of service because of maintenance.
I understand
I'm
that.
saying the officer's busy on another call for service with that squad.
And typically we target 2 squads on duty at all times, sometimes up to 3, right?
Sometimes up to 4, sometimes up to 5, if possible.
But if we've got 3 squads fully outfitted, that covers most of the time we're scheduled. And if those are always on the road, if there is an incident, if 1 or even 2 of them are tied up, there is 1 squad on the road that would have that equipment, plus fire and EMS have it. So it's not like we're completely, unarmed, if you will, as it relates to this sort of entry equipment.
I know we haven't gotten there yet, but if we're talking about a list of priorities, the critical safety equipment is the things that I would definitely prioritize, and pushing back the traffic monitoring equipment, that would be, well, I think that that's also important because you often don't see people not following speed limits when there's an officer sitting right there, but if there's a monitoring equipment that they don't know about, then, you're more often to get real world data about traffic patterns and speeds. But if we're talking about prioritizing need versus want, I think critical emergency response equipment is at the top of my list, and I think that would include emergency entry tools, I'm not sure, so this is to upfit all of our squads with this. And so, if that's, adding just 1 more next year, of course I would want to have all of our squads have it next year. That would be, my preference here, if we can live with just adding 1 more. But, lowest on my priority list is the traffic monitoring equipment, if I had to select, something from this project list.
Renee?
Yeah, so I agree with Peter. I mean, we have EMS and fire already with the emergency entry tool. We do have squads with the equipment. So I would, it would be my position to not advance with the emergency tools equipment. And I agree with Heidi of the traffic monitoring equipment to deduct that as well.
I just want to add, I think that this is absolutely essential equipment to keep our community safe, and we're often, because of the way a police department works, that you're stationed out in the field, ready to respond to a call at any time, where you know, EMS has a whole district that, you know, they're covering, and fire, you know, you have the, you know, the firefighters responding to the call to the station and then taking the equipment out. I mean, often our police officers would be the first unit on scene, in need of the equipment. So I think, you know, this equipment is essential, and I understand we might be, you know, compromising on not doing all of this equipment in 1 year, but I'm definitely in favor of including this equipment in, you know, in next year.
For the emergency entry tools then, is that, it's a one-time capital cost that covers the squads that we, all of the squads then? So it's just, we're talking about a one-time.
How many more squads does that represent, Chief?
That would, truly, we should be able to outfit the additional 3, potentially with the one having part of the equipment, get 4. So the bulk of, literally the majority of our fleet.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Heidi, in the sense that we want to make sure that we've got the equipment in the hands of emergency response when they need it. But again, if the most we ever have on duty is 4, we're targeting 2, sometimes there's 3, yeah, sometimes there's 4. I guess if we've got 3 squads already with them and it's movable, you know, I would be in favor of reducing it and splitting it so that maybe it's over a 2-year period we get to that, and then we prioritize and use the equipment in a way that it's there, to your point, Heidi, that it's available, and split it up over 2 years. I don't know if that's conceivable.
Chris, go ahead.
I'm good with what Peter just said. My question is, how long do these last?
This equipment,
Yeah.
Forever.
long time.
Okay, good. Okay. I just didn't want it to be another 5-year thing that we're gonna be back here.
Paula has her hand up.
Yeah, what's the liability for our officers to be using the emergency entry tools, for instance? And even, you know, I know we've had some scenarios where officers have gone into fire calls. Like, what is our liability with this? I guess I have concerns about that.
Our officers are trained to utilize this equipment for the operations that they're needed for. I.e., this equipment is utilized for your active shooter type of scenario, which, again, I am not bad-mouthing my partners in public safety, but I don't think Chief Lang or Chief Archibald want to be the first ones walking through the doors during that type of scenario.
Understood. I appreciate that. Where I'm trying to get at, and I believe that all of our emergency services are very well equipped. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, we're making a substantial investment in the police department, beyond what I was really comfortable with, to be honest with you. But again, I'm looking at some of these capital expenditures, and I'm looking at it through a lens of what's going on in the greater world. And yes, public safety is huge. I'm obviously in favor of whatever we can do. And yet there's other things that I guess I would like to see us also beef up. So for instance, you know, I look at the Colonial Club line item, and, you know, Saturday I was bringing donations to the food pantry, and there were a lot of older people that were in the food pantry. So, you know, could we beef up that line item? And so, you know, again, just trying to put this in context to what is really needed. And then also just really thinking about what is needed for our community members. You know, how are we helping them? How are we enhancing their quality of life? So I don't mean to nitpick some of these things, but I think that's just, again, I'm looking at it through a different lens, particularly in the last couple of weeks with the state of the economy. So, you know, Heidi, I think you've got a good suggestion. If anything, we remove cameras, the extra flat cameras. But I think we just need to kind of hone in a little bit.
I'll just speak to the Colonial. We did fund their request in full. It was in the administrative budget. with the supplement. And we do have an MOU that'll be coming back to the board probably relatively soon, at least by the end of the year, which better defines our relationship with them. And we do have a plan for 2026 to increase engagement and outreach and help get that service communicated better out to the public so that more people in Cottage Grove can use it.
Good, thank you.
So the emergency entry tools, there was a proposal to maybe phase that over the next 2 years. So would that look like $6,000 in 2026 and another $6,000 in 27? Is that, we just lost Chris, so I don't want to. Again, these are capital items. We're not altering the levy.
Yeah, again, what I want to also focus on intent. So knowing that 27 and 28 are heavier requests for, like I said, the street sweeper in 27 and the ladder truck in 28, I'm really hesitant on pushing anything to 27 and 28.
So I guess staff recommendation along with department request is really to keep this full request in 2026.
From a finance perspective and mapping everything out, that would be ultimately the recommendation. I wouldn't want to sacrifice future years and come in a little bit lower for this year, because all that does is increase. I totally get, does every squad car need entry tools? That's, I think, up for debate, but from a financial perspective, I'm a little weary pushing off any known purchases to 27 or 28 at this time.
Even when you're considering a smaller amount like $6,000.
Any
Granted,
dollar.
I know that they add
so,
up. Okay.
so like, let's just put this into perspective. So this year we came at a little bit over 800,000 or 839 or whatever it was. So next year, just starting with the plan, we're already at $1.1 million worth of requests. So even before, and this was in the capital prioritization plan, the next year is 2.8. So that's why I would be really hesitant on increasing future years when we have a year like this where we're almost $250,000 less than what's allocated. And that was really the intent of coming up with that allowance, to make sure we're staying on track, to make sure we don't have huge spike years.
But how much does it matter? This is debt, so it doesn't really affect our levy limit, right? It's debt.
Sure.
And so we're just taking 6,000, we're deferring it, so we're not paying interest on it for this. I mean, again, we're splitting hairs to a certain extent. I don't see that, personally, I don't see that as a concern, right?
Sure.
Whether we borrow 6,000 next year or this year, I mean, you're right, it's on a big base, but at the end of the day, in the truest sense, we're gonna save interest on the amount of money we defer right now, right?
Correct. Okay. And so, yeah, like to your point, I just want to make sure I'm bringing a budget that's consistent with what was requested.
On the other hand, it is a one-time need of the department.
Again, I go back to, we absolutely need the equipment, right? We've got three complete sets. We buy a set, there's 4 on the road, and they can be moved. So the priority when we go out on the road is you do your pre-shift checks. One of it is you got the right equipment in your vehicle. And I just don't think it's a compromise if it's managed properly, and we just defer it, and instead of a one-time expense, it's one this year, one next year.
So defer, or to split?
That's what I would recommend.
Okay. Split?
I'm good with that.
Yeah, split, okay. All right. And then the last on the list was the traffic monitoring equipment, and I heard remove from this year's budgets. There's nods all around. Okay. Comments from the Zoom? Okay. I think that's the entire list. Cameron, can you confirm we talked about everything we're supposed to talk about?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just catching up on my notes. What was the decision on the traffic monitoring equipment?
To remove.
Okay, just going through my list of things that were directly asked.
Then, yeah, open it up.
Everything I have on my parking lot has been discussed.
All right. Just want to make sure since it is a workshop, is there anything else anyone would like to workshop? Otherwise, this is a discuss and consider. You want to go line by line?
Can I just request again that we separate the police station as a separate vote? If I may?
Yep. I guess I'll make a motion to, what was my motion before?
Can you summarize the changes?
I will. There's gonna be two motions here. I'll make a motion to include the police station capital project as presented in the 2026 budget. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. We'll do roll call votes for everything.
Benzo,
Aye.
Dahl,
Aye.
Kel Nelson,
Aye.
Murphy,
Aye.
Severson,
Aye.
Stoa,
No.
All right, and then I will make a motion to approve the 2026 budget as presented with the following changes: the removal of community park, architect and engineering, the removal of the pickleball wind shields, a reduction to $5,000 for the handset radios, a reduction to $6,000 for, what's that called? The emergency entry tools and equipment. And to remove the traffic monitoring from the police department budget.
I'll second that.
And then I do want to make a date, right, for the, I'm trying to find it in all the pages.
November 17th.
And then to set a public hearing date of November 17th with then formal adoption by the village board to occur after. Amendment.
that was a second by Pete.
Yes.
All right. Benzo,
Aye.
Dahl,
Aye.
Kel Nelson,
Aye.
Murphy,
Aye.
Severson,
Aye.
Stoa,
Yes.
All right. Oh. Then it's just item 6 on our budget, or our agenda for tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks, everyone.